If the CCP was just trying to hide the identity of the virus and the scale of the outbreak, we'd expect them to relent on the cover-up after the rest of the world figured it out. However, the CCP continues to rigidly maintain the cover-up, just like in the earliest days. Why is that? What else could they be hiding? Christmas Eve. It was just a normal working day in Guangzhou, a sprawling port city northwest of Hong Kong on the Pearl River. On that day, Vision Medicals, a genetic technology company, made a critical discovery. They received a fluid sample from a patient in Wuhan. That sample contained a SARS-like coronavirus that was similar to the 2003 SARS virus. 81% similar, to be precise. Time was of the essence to get the information out. On December 27th, the lab relayed the test results to the Wuhan Central Hospital over the phone. They also shared the near-complete gene sequence with the Institute of Pathology and Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences. In internal company messages, researchers described the virus as a bat-like SARS coronavirus. On the 29th and 30th, Vision Medical's researchers went to Wuhan in person to report their findings. They exchanged all their analysis results with the leaders of the Wuhan Central Hospital and the Wuhan Disease Control Center. The following day, on January 1st, one of the lab researchers received a phone call from a Hubei Provincial Health Commission official. The official gave the following orders. Existing lab samples must be destroyed. The lab was forbidden from studying new samples from Wuhan. Any existing analysis, papers, or data cannot be shared to the outside world. Finally, any future findings must only be reported to the government. Then, on January 3rd, another lab outside of Wuhan received samples from Ground Zero. The Shanghai Public Health Clinical Center began sequencing the genome. 2 days later, on January 5th, the clinical center finished the sequence, confirming a new form of SARS that had never been seen before. The clinical center reported this to both the Shanghai and National Health Commissions. They reported the disease was similar to SARS, suspected it was airborne, and recommended that public areas undertake safety measures to control the spread. But, just like the doctor's warnings from before, both government entities seemingly ignored the information and warnings. After almost a week of no response to any government body, on January 11th, the team from the clinical center took a bold step and published the full genome sequence online through Virologic.org and GenBank. This was the first time the rest of the world could see the full virus genome. And like clockwork, the team's research laboratory was shut down the following day. What Vision Medicals and the Shanghai Public Health Clinical Center experienced were not isolated orders from Chinese health officials. In fact, China's top medical authorities expanded such a ban to the entire nation as early as January 3rd. What can genome sequencing reveal? Why were the Chinese authorities so determined to destroy the genome sequences and samples? I spoke with Stephen Hetfield, former researcher for the United States Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases. What does genome sequencing reveal? Can it reveal the identity of the virus and when it came about?
Yeah, basically. To have the genome sequence of any virus lets you establish its family tree. And because mutations occur in different viruses at set rates, you can take an early strain and a new strain, and you can compare the changes that have occurred, the random changes, and it's almost like running a clock backwards. You can see how many new mutations have appeared in this virus compared to this older known virus. And you can run the clock back and make an estimate of when all this new strain appeared. It's called a molecular clock.
Dr. Hatfield said, by studying the genome sequence, we can roughly know when the virus came about, while researchers in the UK did exactly that. On April 17th, UK's Daily Mail reported that a team of researchers at the University of Cambridge gathered data on the possible start of the outbreak. Their analysis concluded that the spread began at some point between September 13th and December 7th. On May 5th, Science Direct published a paper by a group of UK and French scientists focusing on phylogenetic research, which observes the development of specific organisms. Their estimates suggest that the pandemic started sometime between October 6th and December 11th. Coincidentally, on May 9th, the London-based NBC News verification unit reported private analysis that fit into that time frame. The report indicated there was no publicly available cell phone activity in a high-security portion of the Wuhan Institute of Virology from October 7th through October 24th, 2019. They suggested that there may have been a hazardous event sometime between October 6th and 11th. The report says during this time, it is believed that roadblocks were put in place to prevent traffic from coming near the facility. We looked into the traffic reports in Wuhan during that time period. Since the Military World Game took place in Wuhan from October 18th to the 27th, the local government locked down a mountain called Bafenshan, right in the backyard of the Wuhan Virology Lab. However, the lockdown dates did not match up with the reported dates of no cell phone activity. Therefore, it's unlikely that the game influenced the cell phone activity in the area. If there is evidence of a lab shutdown, it would bolster theories that China made a terrible mistake, as President Donald Trump indicated. In fact, the State Department received warnings from the U.S. Embassy staff in 2018 that the Wuhan Institute of Virology had lacked security and severe shortages of properly trained technicians. The Chinese had previously even asked for American help in that regard. So, does that make an accidental leak from the lab feasible? So far, we haven't found any hard proof of either a lab shutdown or that the virus was mistakenly leaked from the lab. But we must explore this direction, simply because the Chinese leadership has revealed that something was wrong with Chinese laboratories. Deep in the mountains of southwest China, there are caves millions of years in the making. They're famous for two things: stalactites and bats. Bats were found to be the source of the 2003 SARS outbreak. Before this was well known, one woman leading a team of researchers was tasked with finding that source. CCTV reported that in November 2011, Dr. Shi Zhengli and her team stumbled upon a bat cave in these tropical mountains. The bats were hosts to 10 different families of the SARS coronavirus. As the director of the Center for Emerging Infectious Diseases at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, this finding eventually helped her discover the pathogen that caused the 2003 SARS outbreak. She brought thousands of the bat coronavirus samples back to her lab in Wuhan, 1,100 miles from the Yunnan bat caves. Then, when the 2019 outbreak started, Dr. Shi swore on her life that the virus did not come from the lab. Her argument was that none of the genome sequences of the bat coronaviruses in her lab matched that of the COVID-19. However, two things cast doubt on Dr. Shi's pledge. First is what has been revealed about China's biolabs in general. And second is what happens at the Wuhan Institute of Virology specifically. What are Chinese biolabs really like? I asked Dr. Sheng Lin, former lab director of the viral disease branch of the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. He also used to work at virology labs in China.
The key issues here is about lab safety and management practice for lab or animal facilities at the biosafety level 3 or 4, that's the P3 and P4 lab, especially in terms of the protection measures for lab technicians or the disposal procedures for animal corpse. And we know China has been very aggressive for the last 20 years to build up P3, P4 lab. And right now China has about 40 P3, P4 labs nationwide. And we even see new plans to build up more P3, P4 labs after the COVID-19 outbreak. So this is of a huge concern. First, China was relatively new to this field. Even the Wuhan Institute of Virology laboratory, the P4 lab, was observed to have security concerns and was short of well-trained professionals. And this was actually documented in a 2018 report from Department of State when they sent 2 advisors to Wuhan Institute of Virology to evaluate the situation there. And we also know the Wuhan Institute of Virology P4 lab was actually directed under the University of Texas Galveston National Laboratory. So this indicated even the Chinese scientists rely on the United States experts to ensure, to advise the safe operation of their P4 lab.
Does that mean the American lab is responsible for what happened at the Chinese lab?
No, because the Galveston National Laboratory, they're only responsible for establishing the protocol for lab safety operations for biosecurity procedures. But the real operations is up to the local team in Wuhan.
And what happened at the Wuhan Institute of Virology is particularly concerning.
So it is a common practice to conduct mutagenicity studies on viral genomes in order to understand the functions of different viral genome components and viral proteins. But one set of experiments of particular concern is the gain-of-function studies. So in this kind of studies, you can conduct molecular level of genetic engineering, or you can infect cell lines, for example, with a bad coronavirus strain, with or without genetic manipulation. And you can conduct these experiments in parallel in multiple cell culture flasks. So after a few days post-infection, you can collect supernatants from the flasks with the most severe cell dying. And then you use this supernatant to do another round of infection. So you basically select viral mutants with higher infectivities in each round. And similarly, you can conduct this kind of experiment in animal models like mouse and ferrets. So basically, you select viral mutants that can spread faster or cause more severe disease in animal models. So this is a typical gain-of-function studies. And we know Shi Zhenli's group from Wuhan Institute of Virology, together with their collaborators in the United States, published an article on Nature Medicine in 2015. In that study, they documented the enhanced pathogenicities when you had the spike of a bad coronavirus strain put on the backbone of a mouse-adapted SARS coronavirus. So this study raised serious bioethics concerns at the moment, and the United States suspended this kind of studies for a while. However, it's not known whether this kind of study was further pursued in China, especially whether it was pursued under some joint project with Chinese military medicine unit, like the ones in Wuhan or Nanjing. This is not saying that the Chinese scientists have the intelligence to design a virus like SARS coronavirus 2, but this kind of gain-of-function study is so dangerous and with unpredictable outcome. And that's why it's very vital for the whole world to know whether China is still continuing these kind of experiments.
China's lax lab standards are well known to insiders, and these widespread practices in Chinese labs have gone on for years. Then suddenly, on January 16, 2020, 4 days before publicly acknowledging human transmission, the China Science and Technology Department released guidelines on safety and management of viral laboratories. A month later, on February 14th, Xi Jinping made comments about accelerating biosafety legislation at the Committee for National Reform.
It's very possible that Xi already knew about a lab leak, so he wanted to publish this law to make it look like he takes biosafety seriously. It was to be a preventative measure, so if in the future the rest of the world looks to find who's responsible, then they have a scapegoat ready. They will say that it was some person who did it, who broke these rules, and it is not a problem with the CCP.
The Chinese leadership not only banned research on the origin of the virus inside China, but they also continue to deny access to foreign experts. This has gone on for months. All the important evidence may now be gone or destroyed. Are there simply too many tracks to cover? Can we believe anything they've told us? This website is called Xilu, or Westland in English. It is one of the most influential websites about the Chinese military. On January 26th, Xilu published an article claiming a so-called culprit of the virus had been found. Citing research from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, the article purports that the coronavirus is not a product of nature. Instead, the article wrote 4 key proteins in the virus had been replaced so that it can target Chinese people. And who would create such a virus to target the Chinese? According to the article, it was none other than the United States. The article claimed the virus was deployed by U.S. service members while participating in the Military World Games in October 2019. Though that particular article was removed from the website in early February, the narrative of American origin has persisted. On March 12th, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian republished a video of Robert Redfield addressing a U.S. congressional committee. In the clip, Redfield said some influenza deaths in the U.S. were later identified as cases of COVID-19. Referring to this clip, Zhao wrote, "The CDC was caught on the spot. When did patient 0 begin in the U.S.? It might be the U.S. Army who brought the epidemic to Wuhan. Be transparent. Make public your data. The U.S. owes us an explanation." Zhao's fellow Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang later backed him up, suggesting the U.S. is hiding something. 5 months into the pandemic, the theory that the virus originated in America is still very much alive in China. In fact, if you search on China's equivalent of Google called Baidu, using the keywords "virus came from America," 66 million results come up. Late spring in New York is a charming time of new life. Blue skies, chirping birds, and spectacular bloomings. But inside the buildings, people are dying. In April 2020, as New York State became the national epicenter, the daily death toll from COVID-19 peaked at 805 in a single day. As of June 26, over 124,000 people have died in the whole country, a toll that has surpassed 47,000 American deaths in the Vietnam War. The global economy slipped into a recession on a scale not seen since World War II.
right, so remind me, what type of work are you gearing towards?
33 million people have sought U.S. unemployment aid since the virus hit. The numbers are heart-wrenching. What makes it worse is that we know this could have been prevented. A study by the University of Southampton indicated that if China had taken measures to address the virus earlier, they could have prevented about 95% of the infections throughout the world. Some people say the American government, the Trump administration, is also at fault. They could have done better and acted earlier with the knowledge they had. After all, the whole world was at the same starting point. Why did Taiwan and South Korea end up in a much better place? That may be true to some extent. But this argument is diverting attention from the elephant in the room. That is, who let this happen to the world in the first place? To people in China, and the answer to that, and what they are seeing today, is not an unprecedented catastrophe, but rather it is history repeating itself. For the past 70 years, China has been plagued with an ominous curse, causing either man-made disasters or natural disasters turned man-made. The largest famine in human history, ending 45 million lives, was known as the Great Leap Forward. What caused it? They said it was drought, but it was really Chairman Mao trying to accelerate agrarian China towards communist utopia. Systematic lying created imaginary surpluses of crops. Government officials gathered crops that did exist and left the peasant population to die without the food they themselves grew. The CCP has long since covered up this disaster, as Chinese citizens know nothing of the true scale of this famine. In 1989, as blood-soaked college students were carried away on makeshift gurneys, the CCP claimed they did not fire a single shot during the Tiananmen Square massacre. They maintained that only about 200 civilians died in the turmoil. A recent declassified UK document indicates the PLA killed at least 10,000 people. Chinese students today don't even know there was ever a protest in Tiananmen. In 2003, as SARS swept through China, the CCP concealed how many people were infected. Only China's neighbors, like Taiwan and South Korea, had experience with handling such respiratory infections. Much of the world was left unprepared for the danger of a similar virus. In 2008, over 87,000 people lost their lives in a magnitude 7.9 earthquake in Sichuan province. Independent investigations showed shoddy construction had caused the death of thousands of children. However, the CCP jailed these investigators. From July 1999, a traditional Chinese mind and body exercise called Falun Dafa has been persecuted in China. The CCP has used the Falun Gong practitioners as well as other political prisoners as forced organ donors, harvesting and selling vital organs on a national scale. Independent investigators have concluded that this claim is true. The CCP still denies it to this day. And yes, the CCP once again covered up another disaster. This is what it has always done and will always do. Why has this persisted for so long? Maybe we should ask, what criminal would ever stop their crimes if they weren't held accountable? In 1989, as dried blood and tank treads were disappearing from the roads of Tiananmen Square, a secret envoy from President George H.W. Bush arrived in Beijing. He extended an olive branch to former Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping. Bush consoled Deng, saying that all the public condemnation for the massacre were nothing more than political rhetoric. Bush authorized the delivery of military supplies to China in the wake of Tiananmen.
Change in our party, change in our leadership, change in our nation.
President Bill Clinton campaigned that he would be tough on China. However, his tough stance quickly softened after he took office. The communist leadership mobilized a pro-China coalition within both the administration and Congress. As a result, not only were sanctions against China quickly lifted, but also Clinton helped China enter the World Trade Organization. He also granted China the status of most favored nation. Not just the political sphere, but technological and financial companies are assisting China as well. U.S. tech giants facilitated China forming into a police state with invasive surveillance. Cisco laid the foundation for China's Great Firewall, as well as an information surveillance system called the Golden Shield Project. IBM provides servers to Golden Shield Engineering. Oracle provides database services, and Microsoft provides a personal operating system. Led by JP Morgan Chase, the CCP's old friend Wall Street has channeled a huge amount of money to the Chinese Communist regime over the past 40 years. JP Morgan succumbed to nepotism when it hired children of high-ranking Chinese officials. This helped the company win billions of dollars of Chinese business contracts. Morgan Stanley investment indexes include Chinese companies that often pose a national security threat to America. Its actions have resulted in trillions of US dollars being invested in the Chinese economy. There is one particular company listed on the Morgan Stanley index that we need to single out. It's called Tencent, and it owns the Chinese social media giant WeChat. WeChat has long helped the CCP monitor dissidents. The whistleblower of this pandemic, Dr. Li Wenliang and others, were first tracked and reported on WeChat when they exposed the virus spread via this social media platform.
Only reason this situation has gotten as bad as it's gotten is because the capitalists in the West, the Wall Street and the City of London, and certain corporatists, certain elites, what I call the Party of Davos, right, have basically financed the CCP and has allowed them to get technology. Those days are over.
In China and America alike, we have a saying, what goes around comes around. For the past 40 years, America and the West have been in a state of willful ignorance, to put it nicely, about the CCP's crimes. Now the circumstances have forced us to face the consequences of that negligence. China has a rich history, splendid culture, and profound spiritual tradition. Lao Tzu would have been able to hold a candid conversation with Socrates about ethics and the laws of the universe. China's millennium-long tradition of revering heaven and ancestors echoes Edmund Burke's concept of an eternal society, where there's a contract among the dead, the living, and the unborn. But before China revives those traditions, there must first be a decoupling between the CCP and the United States. I hope this decoupling will happen, because if it doesn't, there will be more victims among us when history repeats itself, or we ourselves will become part of the problem. Stay safe, and God bless America.